Good morning. This is Father Stephen Kelly from St. John's Church in Detroit. We're continuing our series of daily morning meditations where we generally look at one or another lessons that are assigned for morning or evening prayer, what is known as the Daily Office Lectionary. And for today, for Tuesday, I want to continue working our way through the 6th chapter of St. John's Gospel. It's in this chapter that we have this wonderful development of the understanding of the doctrine of the Holy Communion, and in particular, the real presence of Christ in the Blessed Sacrament. We began the chapter with Jesus feeding the multitude with the loaves and the fishes, and then we went from there when they came back for yet more food. Jesus goes on to explain that he is the bread of life, right? Your father ate manna in the wilderness and they died. But Jesus says, I am the bread which comes down from heaven. It was a nice reference, of course, to manna, which they received from heaven when the Jews were going through their great 40 years in the desert, escaping slavery in Egypt. And so Jesus uses that as a reference point, but goes on to go one step further and says, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no life in you, right? This is the great important theology of the real presence of Christ in the Blessed Sacrament. And just as Jesus says at the Last Supper, this is my body and this is my blood, so it is we understand why he's saying that because of this particular chapter that John has recorded for us. And by the way, there's a nice tapestry of St. John that was never commissioned. The portrait was written by Wirt Rowland, who was the architect who supervised the renovations of the church in the 1930s when the building was moved to widen Woodward Avenue. And he proposed this wonderful tapestry to go on the wall near the altar over the organ console, but we never made it. But we do have this beautiful sketch of it. So St. John has developed this doctrine for us, this understanding that Jesus Christ is giving himself to us, as he said at the Last Supper in the accounts of all the other Gospels, that this is my body and this is my blood. So if Jesus says this is what it is, and then he says, according to St. John's Gospel, that unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no life in you, then there has to be a way for that to occur. And of course it is through the Blessed Sacrament. So this is not easy, right? It's not going to be easy for people to comprehend and to embrace. And so jumping at verse number 60, we hear exactly that. Many therefore of his disciples, when they'd heard this, said, this is a hard saying. Who can hear it? When Jesus knew in himself that his disciples murmured at it, he said unto them, doth this offend you? What and if ye shall see the Son of Man ascend up where he was before? It is the Spirit that quickeneth, the flesh profiteth nothing. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit, and they are life. But there are some of you that believe not. For Jesus knew from the beginning who they were that believed not, and who should betray him. And he said, therefore I say unto you, that no man can come unto me, except it were given unto him of my Father. From that time many of his disciples went back, and walked no more with him. Then said Jesus to the 12, will ye go away also? Then Simon Peter answered him, Lord, to whom shall we go? Thou hast the words of eternal life. And we believe, and are sure that thou art Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus answered them, have not I chosen you 12, and one of you is a devil? He spoke of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, for he it was that should betray him, being one of the 12. Okay, so here's the theology that's been given to us in the first part of the chapter, and here's Jesus saying, look, I know this is a hard saying, I know this is going to be hard to accept, but it's the truth. I can't compromise. And in fact, he goes on one more step and he says that God has given him people who will understand, those whose minds are blinded, those whose hearts are hardened, those who the devil will deceive. They're not going to be able to accept this doctrine. And unfortunately, the church in some places have gotten wiggly about this. Even some people within our own denomination do not fully understand. One thing to not understand, it's another thing to be taught and to repudiate it. That is certainly a deception. We do not want to do that, of course. But it's so important that we put this together as the vital part of the life of the church, the reception of the Blessed Sacrament. And here's good old St. Peter, right? Simon Peter, who turns around and says, where would we go? Why would we flee away? Jesus didn't run after these people and say, wait, I'm using an allegory, right? He said, these are the words, this is the truth, and this is what I'm saying. And many people are not going to accept it. It's the reality. There are people who will not accept the truth. I'm sorry that that's true, but it is. And they won't accept that either. But here's Simon Peter saying, where else would we go, Lord? Why would we leave? Right? Because you are the one who has the words of eternal life. You're the Son of the living God. And we thank God for Peter's faithfulness here. We know he's going to fail in other places, but he does get this one right. So today's Tuesday, 12:15 Holy Communion, 5 o'clock evening prayer, and God willing, we'll see you in church.